Almost anything in life, people respect you if you're straight with them. That's how Mark Carney opened his speech at the Canadian Club in Toronto, and in that single line you could feel the difference. This wasn't a politician reading off notes or repeating pre-packaged talking points. This was a leader setting a new tone for Canada, a tone grounded in honesty, strategy, and quiet confidence. Right from the start, Carney made it clear. Canada is no longer content to sit on the sidelines or follow someone else's rules. The world is changing, and Carney's message was that Canada will change with it, boldly, deliberately, and on its own terms. In his address, Carney shared stories from his recent meetings with world leaders, including President Xi Jinping of China. But he didn't speak in the usual diplomatic riddles. No vague statements or vague promises. He talked plainly, explaining how both nations agreed on what's off-limits, what's open for discussion, and how they could work together with clarity and respect. That moment alone signaled something historic. Canada, under Carney, is now sitting across from global powers as an equal, not as a junior partner. And when he mentioned a similar understanding with the United States, it was evident. Canada is no longer waiting for permission. This is leadership that doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, doesn't panic. It's calm, precise, unstoppable. And then Carney added a line that would echo around the world. A line that combined humor, clarity, and a strategic jab at decades of U.S. trade arrogance. He compared America's protectionist policies to a country club that charges membership fees and said he prefers Costco instead. The room erupted in laughter, but behind the joke was a serious declaration. Canada will chart its own path. This was the start of a defining moment in modern Canadian leadership, a moment that would reshape how the country is seen on the global stage and how it sees itself. Mark Carney didn't just walk onto the stage at the Canadian Club, he commanded it. From the very first words, he established a new kind of leadership, one rooted in honesty, clarity, and strategic thinking. Almost anything in life, people respect you if you're straight with them, he said. And with that, he set the tone for a Canada that refuses to play by old rules or rely on empty rhetoric. This was a leader showing that the country's voice matters and that the era of waiting for approval from others, especially powerful neighbors, is over. Carney's diplomacy isn't flashy, it's deliberate. He shared insights from his meetings with President Xi Jinping, describing how they defined boundaries, agreed on discussions, and found a path forward that respects both nations' interests. No flattery, no political showmanship. Just business-like clarity. And when he referenced similar understandings with the United States, it was a subtle but powerful signal. Canada is stepping up as an equal on the world stage. No longer a sidekick, no longer a passive observer, Canada is a player in global strategy. And Carney is steering that ship with calm precision. What makes this even more compelling is that Carney combines seriousness with relatability. He can discuss complex trade negotiations or international diplomacy, but he does so in plain, accessible terms. He frames challenges clearly, balances competing priorities, and communicates confidence without arrogance. The audience isn't just hearing about policy, they're witnessing leadership in action, the kind that commands respect, builds trust, and inspires belief. For a generation used to political theater, Carney's approach is quietly revolutionary. Direct, factual, and unwavering, proving that leadership doesn't need theatrics to be effective. And this was only the beginning. The way he set the tone in this speech would ripple through discussions on trade, national security, energy, and political strategy. Carney was showing Canadians and the world that clarity, honesty, and confidence aren't just ideals, they are tools for tangible, transformative leadership. But the story was about to take a wittier, sharper turn, and the next moment in the speech would make headlines worldwide. Then came the line that would immediately grab global attention. Carney leaned into humor, but behind the laughter was a sharp, strategic message. He compared U.S. trade policy to a country club that charges a membership fee, exclusive, costly, and restrictive. Then with a grin, he said he prefers Costco instead, open, fair, and affordable. The room erupted in laughter, but make no mistake, this was not just a joke. It was a carefully crafted declaration that Canada would no longer pay to play by someone else's rules. By framing U.S. protectionism as a pay-to-play system, Carney highlighted a truth that few world leaders publicly voice. Washington no longer dictates the rules, and Canada doesn't need permission to prosper. It was a bold, witty, and subtle way of signaling independence, reminding the audience that the country has both the capability and the confidence to chart its own course. Humor became strategy, laughter became clarity. Carney wasn't attacking for spectacle. He was reframing a decades-old narrative of dependence and positioning Canada as a proactive force in global trade. Beyond the joke, the message was serious. 85% of Canadian exports already enjoy tariff-free access to the U.S., a massive advantage many overlook. But Carney made it clear that this isn't a reason to be complacent. Instead, it's a foundation to build upon. Canada doesn't need to beg for access or sit at a restrictive club to succeed. The country can innovate, invest, and grow on its own terms. Factories, tech, agriculture, and energy projects are all part of this vision, signaling a new era where Canadian strength is self-reliant, strategic, and resilient. And while the room laughed at Costco, the world was listening closely. The comparison wasn't just memorable, it was a turning point. Canada's independence in trade and diplomacy had been declared with both wit and precision, setting the stage for a speech that would ripple across policy, politics, and public perception alike. The next section would reveal how Carney leveraged this momentum to emphasize Canada's industrial and economic strategy. After the laughter from the country club joke faded, Carney shifted to a more serious, yet equally compelling message. Canada doesn't just have the confidence to challenge the status quo, it has the tools to back it up. He reminded the audience that 85% of Canadian exports already enter the U.S. tariff-free, a fact that is often overlooked. This isn't just a number, it's a foundation for independence. It's a clear advantage that allows Canada to invest, innovate, and grow without waiting for approval or handouts. Carney framed it not as a boast, but as a strategic springboard, a platform from which Canada can build its future. He didn't stop there. Carney emphasized that Canada's approach isn't reactive, it's proactive. The country is focused on building capacity at home, expanding factories, investing in technology, modernizing agriculture, and boosting energy production. Each sector, he suggested, is an opportunity to reclaim strength and create resilience. This mindset isn't just about economics, it's about redefining national confidence. It's a declaration that Canada can succeed on its own terms, and that the country is ready to seize opportunities without being tethered to the whims of foreign powers. Carney's message combined pragmatism with inspiration. He acknowledged the challenges ahead but framed them as actionable, solvable, and controllable. By focusing on what Canada can influence and execute directly, he shifted the conversation from limitation to possibility. It's a mindset designed to empower citizens, investors, and policymakers alike. No longer is Canada asking to be invited to the table. It's building its own table, setting its own rules, and defining its own future. This section of the speech tied together trade, strategy, and ambition, laying the groundwork for Carney's next points on energy, sustainability, and national development. And as the audience absorbed these insights, it became clear. Canada's vision under Carney isn't just about policy. It's about purpose, independence, and a deliberate, forward-looking approach to leadership. Carney didn't just stop at trade and tariffs. He tackled one of the most contentious and closely watched areas of Canadian policy, energy and the environment. The room was ready for political hedging or vague assurances, but Carney delivered clarity. When asked about regulations like Bill C-69 and emissions caps, he didn't dance around concerns. Simply and directly he said, "They're wrong." 2 words, yet they carried the weight of decades of debate. In that moment, he reframed the narrative. Canada is capable of balancing energy growth with environmental responsibility, and it can do so without compromise. He explained that Canada is actively working with Alberta on a grand bargain, aligning oil sands development with low-carbon technology and carbon capture. This isn't just about meeting environmental targets. It's about building a multi-billion-dollar industry, securing economic growth, and demonstrating that Canada can innovate in ways the world is watching. By combining traditional energy resources with sustainable practices, Carney illustrated a vision where economic strength and environmental responsibility coexist, rather than compete. What makes this approach so compelling is Carney's calm, deliberate communication. He doesn't need to shout to make a point. Each line, each example, is carefully chosen to demonstrate leadership grounded in facts and actionable strategy. He reframes skepticism, showing that Canada is not constrained by regulations or critics, but empowered by them to find solutions that work for everyone. And the impact of this section of his speech is clear. Carney isn't just defending policy, he's redefining it. He positions Canada as a leader in energy innovation, setting an example for other nations while simultaneously building confidence at home. The country isn't waiting for global permission to act. It's leading responsibly, innovating boldly, and proving that progress and sustainability can go hand in hand. Next, Carney would turn his attention to another arena where Canada's sovereignty and strategic independence are front and center: national defense. Carney then shifted to a topic that few leaders dare to address so candidly: national defense. In an era where global threats are evolving and traditional security assumptions no longer hold, Carney made it clear that Canada isn't following the crowd, it's setting its own course. "We're not going to spend money on defense just because all the other kids are doing it," he said. That line wasn't just about budgets, it was a rejection of performative politics. Canada will invest strategically, based on its own priorities and needs, not to appease Washington, NATO, or anyone else. The audience was struck when Carney detailed how Canadian forces now maintain a 365-day presence in the Arctic, compared to just 4 months previously. This isn't a symbolic gesture, it's a concrete assertion of sovereignty, a clear statement that Canada is taking control of its northern territories and protecting its strategic interests. Under Carney, the military isn't reactive. It's prepared, present, and proactive. He tied this focus on defense to a broader vision of national capability and pride. Carney reminded Canadians of their history. After World War II, they built massive infrastructure projects, universities, and industrial achievements. Now Canada is poised to step up again, building boldly, innovating rapidly, and taking calculated risks. Defense, economy, and infrastructure are all interconnected, and under Carney, the message is simple. Canada's sovereignty, security, and growth are intertwined, and each will be pursued deliberately and intelligently. This section reinforced a recurring theme of the speech. Canada is reclaiming control, asserting itself as a confident, capable nation. It's a country that doesn't wait for instructions or approval. Every policy, every investment, every strategy reflects a deliberate choice to prioritize Canada's interests first. And while defense was the focus here, it seamlessly led to Carney's next point: political influence and leadership, where his wit and strategy would make their own powerful statement. Carney's leadership isn't just about policy or strategy, it's also about perception, influence, and subtle political mastery. The speech reached a moment that instantly went viral. When asked how many more seats he would need for a majority, Carney smiled and said, "Call your local MP if they're not a liberal." Quick, witty, and seemingly offhand, the line packed a punch far beyond the laughter it provoked. It was humor with purpose, a subtle message across the aisle that leadership isn't always loud or aggressive, it can be clever, measured, and effective. The brilliance of this moment lies in its subtlety. Carney didn't need to name names or launch attacks. The implication was clear. The opposition's anger-driven politics are faltering, and Canadians are noticing. He highlighted the shifting allegiances inside Parliament without overt confrontation, showing that influence and authority can be asserted calmly yet unmistakably. The audience laughed, but they also understood the underlying reality. Carney is setting the tone, controlling the narrative, and guiding the political conversation, all with precision and composure. This wit isn't frivolous. It's part of a broader strategy. Carney's humor demonstrates confidence, fosters trust, and disarms opposition. It's a tool for engagement, making complex political dynamics accessible to everyday Canadians while simultaneously reinforcing his authority. Every joke, every line, every pause is deliberate, reinforcing the impression of a leader who is in control, grounded, and unshakable. By combining policy expertise with strategic humor, Carney demonstrates that leadership isn't just about making decisions. It's about shaping perception, winning confidence, and building momentum. While others rely on aggression, anger, or theatrics, Carney relies on facts, clarity, and carefully chosen words. The political landscape is being influenced not by confrontation but by intellect, poise, and wit. And as the speech moved forward, Carney was ready to close with a vision that would resonate far beyond the walls of the Canadian club, inspiring pride and forward-thinking ambition. As the speech approached its conclusion, Carney shifted focus to a vision that tied together trade, energy, defense, and politics into a single, inspiring narrative. He invoked the spirit of post-war Canada, the nation that built the Trans-Canada Highway, Expo 67, and the CN Tower. These weren't just infrastructure projects, they were symbols of ambition, innovation, and national pride. Carney reminded Canadians that their country has always dreamed big and delivered bigger, and now, under his leadership, it's ready to do so again. His words were deliberate, each phrase carrying weight without raising his voice. "We used to build in this country. We will build big, fast, and bold again," he declared. The line wasn't mere rhetoric, it was a call to action, a statement of purpose, and a challenge to Canadians to embrace the future with confidence. From manufacturing to technology, energy to infrastructure, Carney painted a picture of a Canada that is proactive, self-reliant, and strategically positioned to thrive in a complex world. Beyond national pride, Carney emphasized mindset. Leadership isn't just about reacting to external pressures or following established rules, it's about setting new ones. Canada, he made clear, no longer waits for permission, no longer measures success by someone else's standards. Instead, it leads on its own terms with clarity, precision, and vision. Every sector from trade and industry to energy and defense is part of this deliberate, forward-looking approach. The closing lines crystallize the message: we choose Canada, Not a slogan, not a catchphrase, but a promise. A commitment to leadership, independence, and growth that resonates at home and abroad. Carney didn't just end a speech, he framed a movement. One that redefines Canadian leadership, inspires confidence, and reminds the world that Canada is no longer following, it's leading. And for those listening, it was impossible not to feel that Canada's best days aren't behind them. They're right in front, waiting for the courage to act. Mark Carney's speech at the Canadian Club wasn't just an address. It was a masterclass in leadership, strategy, and vision. From the opening line about honesty commanding respect to the witty, call your local MP, mic drop, every word was deliberate, every pause meaningful. Carney reminded Canadians that leadership isn't about theatrics, anger, or reaction. It's about clarity, precision, and the courage to act strategically in pursuit of the nation's interests. Throughout the speech, a pattern emerged. Canada is reclaiming control. In trade, it's no longer paying for membership in a restrictive country club, but building its own opportunities and leveraging tariff advantages to invest, innovate, and grow. In energy, it's balancing economic progress with environmental responsibility, creating low-carbon industries while generating billions in value. In defense, it's asserting sovereignty with a 365-day Arctic presence, rejecting performative spending, and prioritizing what truly matters for Canada. And in politics, Carney is shaping the narrative with subtle wit, winning trust even from those who once opposed him, proving that influence and leadership can be exercised calmly yet effectively. The broader message is undeniable. Canada's best days are not behind it. Carney framed a vision rooted in national pride, historical achievement, and forward-looking ambition. He reminded citizens that the country has always dared to dream big, build boldly, and step up when the moment demanded it, and now, under his steady leadership, it is doing so again. The promise isn't abstract, it's actionable. Factories, infrastructure, energy, defense, and industry will all reflect Canada's self-reliance, ingenuity, and strategic mindset. In the end, Carney's speech was a statement of intent. Canada will lead on its own terms with confidence, clarity, and purpose. It wasn't just about policy. It was about redefining leadership, inspiring belief, and showing that a calm, precise, and unstoppable approach can achieve transformative results. Canadians were reminded that the future is theirs to shape, and the world is watching as Canada steps boldly into its next chapter.